Welcome to Charts Today. My name's David Linton, and today's edition for Thursday, the 15th of February, comes to you from London. I'm going to focus mostly on energy today. I will be at eWorld next week in Essen, the massive European energy conference, and I hope to see you there. I'll be on the EMBW stand most of the time, or Montel. So come and see me. I'm happy to talk through any charts, but let's have a run through what's going on in the market. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the main markets, just to say that the dollar, we're waiting for this next kick up, a move above 105, and we start to look towards this target. We have actually seen some quite big moves in Bitcoin lately, new upside targets there, so that's really quite interesting. And I get lots of questions, and I'm always happy to answer any charts you want me to see. Noticing the downside targets here met on gold, it just started to cross the cloud on the daily. This is the medium term daily, and here in the short term 60-minute, this target's now met, so really quite key. The target's given back there, now met, so really interesting there. And we've, of course, a lot of people ask me about Nvidia. Can it go any higher? So just looking at Nvidia, we've got big upside targets, still much higher. Most interestingly of all, if we make a new high, we activate these orange targets, pushing us higher still. So watching for that to happen. Right, now let's just look at the energy mix. We start by looking at Brent crude first of all, and we really interesting. We went out as bearish to clients this morning. We're down 0.5% in our morning call report. If you want the reports, just message me. I'm more than happy to sign you up for the reports. And we see here this downside target waiting for this to activate that would push us much lower. This is off the thrust low that we've had this thrust lower. If we go lower still, we activate that downside target. It's remembering this is a point and figure technique that was invented decades ago, just bringing it into the modern world by putting the targets on time-based charts. So really quite interesting there. We're moving below the cloud, and of course the clouds are our trend technique. And I'm giving a seminar on the London LSEG site tomorrow, 3 time zones. I'm giving the site for Eikon users. If you want to know how cloud charts work, I'll be giving a long lecture there. But the key thing is we are crossing below the cloud. That puts us in a bearish frame of mind short term, hitting cloud resistance here on the medium term, and we're waiting for this target to be activated. So bearish there for crude oil, and we can see that there. And of course, if you're trading crude oil, you can go to the very short-term chart. So here is the 10-minute chart, and you could even go to the 1-minute chart, and these charts will give you much tighter targets because they're much shorter term, and the targets are more granular. They're set to smaller unit sizes. If you want to understand the targets, message me. I'll put you in touch with some videos that will help you. So looking at US nat gas, this has really been plummeting of late. We've got targets to 131, 117. I mean, 131 and 117, these are the train tracks. We're falling off a cliff here. Looking at the 60-minute chart, we see here the downside targets over the next week, 155, 154. Those targets now looking like dead certs. Notice how we pushed lower there as well. And in fact, if I look at those charts on the 60-minute chart, we see here, sorry, on the 1-minute chart, you can see here we had upside targets this morning. We were neutral because we had these upside targets. They've been met, and now we're just in the downside. This is the trading range, 161 to 164. So you've just got to watch those targets on your 1-minute chart. That's going to be quite key. And here we see the targets on the 60-minute, that 154, 155. Those targets were given at 183 and 175 respectively. So that's where we're going. You really cannot ignore the targets. If we look at that's the UK emissions future. Quite interesting there. But let's look at the European emissions future. We see here downside target to 44.72. Now, a lot of people really struggle with that. We've got a new mini upside target. Just remembering that every wave of recovery that we've had has then produced a thrust off that high, giving us a new downside target. So these upside counter trend moves, which can be quite violent, quite dramatic, then set you up for the next move down. So we've got to be very cautious. We're below the trend on the daily, still below on the 60-minute. Looks like we might recover to cloud resistance, another 4% higher, but then what happens next? Do we have another wave pushing us down to the next target? It's really what you've got to watch out for. So it's really quite key. If we have a look at coal, we see here we've got downside targets in coal. This one given back at $111 to 67. That looked very unlikely then, but now we're at 90. Downside target met. We've got a short-term target here to 83. Really is downward pressure below the cloud on the medium-term daily and on the 60-minute. And if, of course, you're trading coal, you could look at the 10-minute charts, but they're not going to be very granular. You want to maybe look at that on your Trayport data. But the key thing here is we are seeing coal pushing lower. Now, looking at gas, we are seeing a bit of recovery this morning. Now, again, it's the same concept. The medium-term chart for gas, we see we've got these downside targets here. 22.92 was given at 31. No one really believed that then. All these downside targets. We've got another tussle going on here where if we break below 24.50, we then look to 22.30. We've got a little upside target, but just remembering similarly, every wave up then gives us a possible sell-off for a downside while we're in a downtrend. Now you can look at the 10-minute chart. If you're trading gas, got these little upside targets this morning, so that's encouraging. We're seeing that on the 10-minute chart. And if we go to the 1-minute chart, if you're trading gas very short term, this is what you'll be looking at. And really interesting, there's this morning's recovery on the 1-minute chart. We've got this downside target. This will be negated if we move above this high, but there's a real shortage of targets. We've just got to wait for this to play out. So really quite interesting there on TTF. Similar picture on MBP, of course. We see here the downside targets, again, 55.70 was given at 77. And again, not many people believe that, but that's where we've gone. We've hit a low of around 60 euros, a fall through 60 euros, and we look to 55. We've got this upside target orange. It will only turn green if we activate and with a move to a new high above where the target was given. So that will then activate, and then we can start to place some credence on that target, but we are still below the cloud, remember, so really questionable whether we'll move there. Now, if we look at German power, this has been really bearish of late, probably the most bearish looking chart in the European energy mix. Look at all these downside targets on the daily. And there were many more. I'm just showing on my system a number of 8 targets, but you could have as many targets as you want going back and just see these waves of sell-offs. Every sell-off off a high produces a new downside target on the daily. So that's really quite interesting. The downside target's met there. It's the 60-minute that we've got to worry about. We've got targets to 68.50, 67.43 if we make a new low. And of course, we're below the cloud all the time. So we really place much importance. We did have a little counter trend target that was met there. You may get the upside target, but they'll be negated as soon as you move below the level they're given. So really quite key there for German power. And again, we can look at the 10-minute chart. We see there downside targets are still dominant. We've got a little mini upside target this morning just been given. So that's where we're playing for on the 10-minute. And the data is not sufficiently granular really to go down to the 1 minute. This is data on EAX. If you've got your Trayport data, you might have more granularity in your data. So really quite key there. And last of all, we take a look at Nordic power. And that's been really quite interesting as well. We see here on the quarterly chart, we went out as bearish this morning. Really quite clear targets to the downside here on the daily and on the 60 minutes. So again, this downside target of 25.45 is what we're looking at the moment. A new low below 29.70, and we go to 25.45. In fact, we can have a quick look at some of the other contracts. So here, this is Italian power. Notice this downside target given and now met. Got some very big downside targets there. Italian power looking very bad indeed. And if we look at French power, this has also been giving downside targets. Look at all the downside targets they're given on the daily at much higher levels, all being met. And this is really where we are now sitting on the daily. And of course, you could go to the 10-minute chart. If you're trading French power, there are all your targets. That's what you want to be watching. That's it for today. I'm at eWorld next week. Come and see me on the MBW stand. Look forward to seeing you there. Until then, happy charting. Bye for now.